Hit the like button, share your thoughts, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. The vast expanse of the Relaxian Council chamber shimmered with an ethereal glow, the silver walls reflecting the starlight of a dozen captured suns. The air hummed softly, charged with the energy of advanced technologies and the barely perceptible undertone of alien whispers. The Queen of Relaxia, an otherworldly figure of sinuous elegance, presided over the gathering from her throne of bioluminescent vines. Her crown pulsed with a rhythmic light, communicating with her subjects on frequencies no human could comprehend. Today, however, a unique guest stood before her. Commander Jason Matthews of the United Earth Alliance strode confidently into the chamber, his every step echoing on the metallic floor. Clad in the crisp black and gold uniform of his station, his figure was both commanding and strikingly foreign among the gelatinous, crystalline, and feathered beings of the Council. As the first human envoy to set foot on Relaxia, Jason carried with him the weight of an entire species' reputation. Commander Matthews, the Queen's voice resonated, a harmonious blend of tones that bypassed the ear and vibrated directly in the mind. You have come a great distance to broker an alliance with Relaxia. We welcome you, human. Jason inclined his head in respect. Your Majesty, it is an honor to be here. On behalf of humanity, I extend our hand in friendship and cooperation. Together, I believe our species can achieve great things. The Queen's elongated form shifted, her translucent skin shimmering as her bioluminescence brightened slightly. She leaned forward, her expression unreadable but her tone tinged with curiosity. Humanity intrigues us, Commander. You are fragile yet resilient, limited in your biology yet vast in your ambition. We wish to understand you better. Jason's lips twitched into a cautious smile. That is why I am here, Your Majesty. To answer your questions and share knowledge. The Queen's inner light pulsed again, and a ripple of telepathic whispers coursed through the chamber. The gathered aliens seemed to exchange amused or curious glances, or what passed for such expressions in their myriad physiologies. Then, the Queen's voice returned, tinged with a surprising note of mischief. Tell us, Commander, about your species' methods of reproduction. Jason blinked, his composed demeanor faltering for the briefest moment. The room grew eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the star-capturing conduits. The Queen's expression remained serene, but Jason could sense the weight of genuine curiosity behind her question. Clearing his throat, Jason replied diplomatically, reproduction is a deeply personal and, in many ways, sacred process for humans. It involves intimacy and emotional connection, as well as biological compatibility. The Queen tilted her head, the motion fluid and almost serpentine. Fascinating. Among the Relaxians, reproduction is a communal act, devoid of physical contact. We exchange genetic data telepathically and weave it into offspring with the assistance of bioengineering. Your methods seem inefficient but intriguingly intimate. Jason nodded, relieved that the conversation hadn't spiraled into anything more awkward. Our methods may seem inefficient, but they form bonds that extend beyond biology. It's part of what makes us human. The Queen's gaze lingered on him, her eyes glimmering with what Jason could only describe as amusement, or perhaps fascination. Your perspective intrigues me. Perhaps you might demonstrate this process for us? Jason's composure cracked entirely this time. Demonstrate, he echoed, his voice an octave higher than intended. He could hear a few muffled chuckles, if one could call the sounds emitted by the gelatinous Grovneck's ambassador chuckles. The Queen allowed a moment of silence to linger, clearly savoring the human's discomfort before clarifying. Explain further, Commander. Describe the nuances of this emotional connection. I am curious to understand why it is so vital to your kind. Jason exhaled, realizing he wasn't being propositioned but still feeling the weight of the room's amused gazes. Straightening his posture, he replied, emotional connections are the foundation of human relationships. They're not just about reproduction. They're about trust, love, and mutual growth. It's what allows us to form families and, ultimately, societies, The queen seemed to ponder this, her glow dimming slightly. Love, she repeated, the alien tones of her voice softening. A concept foreign to us. Yet, it stirs something intriguing. Before Jason could respond, an attendant approached the queen and whispered something telepathically. The queen's glow brightened as she addressed the room. This discussion is most enlightening, but I sense we are only beginning to grasp the complexities of humanity. Let us reconvene tomorrow to continue our exploration. Jason bowed slightly. As you wish, Your Majesty. As he exited the chamber, Jason couldn't help but feel the weight of the encounter pressing down on him. Humanity's future rested on his ability to navigate these alien waters, and the Queen's intense curiosity promised both opportunities and challenges. Outside, the twin moons of Relaxia cast an eerie light on the sleek, silver landscape, and Jason couldn't shake the feeling that the Queen's question had opened a door he wasn't entirely prepared to walk through. He had no idea how far the Relaxian Queen's curiosity might go, or how it might shape the future of their species. Jason Matthews leaned against the smooth, silver wall of the ambassadorial quarters, staring out at the alien skyline. Twin moons hovered above the horizon, their light casting an almost dreamlike glow on the cityscape of Relaxia. Towers of translucent crystal pierced the heavens, while the occasional hum of energy-laden winds hinted at the advanced technology hidden beneath the city's elegance. Still reeling from the Queen's peculiar line of questioning, Jason tried to compose himself. The memory of her curious request lingered. How could he describe something as deeply human as emotional connection to beings who had no direct equivalent? And why did her interest feel so personal? A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The room's interface system activated, projecting a holographic assistant, a slim, metallic figure whose limbs flowed like mercury. Commander Matthews, it intoned in a neutral voice, Her Majesty invites you to a private cultural exchange at her sanctum. Transportation will arrive shortly. Jason hesitated. The phrasing alone made his heart race. Private cultural exchange? What exactly did that mean? I'll be ready, he said, masking his apprehension with the calm authority of a seasoned diplomat. Moments later, Jason found himself seated in an elegant, gravity-defying transport that glided silently through the city. The vehicle's walls were translucent, offering panoramic views of Relaxia. The sheer scale of the civilization struck him anew. For all humanity's progress, they were still decades, perhaps centuries, behind what the Relaxians had achieved. The transport slowed as it approached a towering spire that seemed to float above the city itself. As Jason stepped out, he was greeted by a pair of Relaxian attendants, their translucent forms faintly glowing in the moonlight. Without a word, they gestured for him to follow. The Queen's sanctum was unlike anything Jason had seen before. The chamber was circular, with walls that shimmered like liquid silver, constantly shifting to reflect the emotions of its occupants. At the center, the Queen reclined on a throne of living vines that writhed gently beneath her weight. Commander Matthews, she greeted, her voice resonating with its usual melodic blend of tones. You honor us with your presence. Jason inclined his head. The honor is mine, Your Majesty. How may I assist you tonight? The Queen gestured to a raised platform nearby. On it rested a collection of glowing crystalline spheres. Tonight, I wish to understand the heart of your people. These spheres contain fragments of Relaxian culture, our art, philosophy, and history. In return, I ask that you share with me an equivalent glimpse into humanity. Jason approached the platform cautiously, noting the faint hum of the spheres. How do they work? He asked. The Queen's glow brightened as she explained. Each sphere is imbued with telepathic impressions, accessible to any sentient mind. By touching them, you will perceive the essence of our culture as if it were your own memory. Jason nodded, impressed. And what would you like from me? Stories, the Queen replied. The fabric of your kind's existence. The tales you tell one another. They hold the key to understanding your essence. Jason hesitated, feeling the weight of the request. What story could possibly represent humanity to a species as advanced as the Relaxians? After a moment's thought, he began. On Earth, he said, his voice steady. There's an ancient story about a man named Prometheus. He was a titan, a being of immense power, who defied the gods to bring fire to humanity. Fire was not just warmth or light. It was knowledge, a tool for survival, and the spark of civilization. But for his defiance, Prometheus was punished, chained to a rock where an eagle would eat his liver every day, only for it to grow back by night. As Jason spoke, the chamber's shimmering walls shifted. Patterns of fire and stars began to emerge, reflecting the tale's imagery. The queen listened intently, her glow pulsating in rhythm with his words. Prometheus' sacrifice, Jason continued, symbolized humanity's unyielding desire to grow, even at great personal cost. It's a story about defiance, perseverance, and the belief that knowledge is worth any price. When he finished, the queen's glow dimmed, and the chamber fell silent. Your stories, she said at last, carry an emotional depth that is foreign to us. They reveal not only your struggles but your resilience. Fascinating. Jason glanced at the spheres. May I? The queen nodded, and Jason reached out, touching one of the glowing orbs. In an instant, Jason was overwhelmed by a rush of images and sensations. He saw vast bioluminescent forests, heard the hum of Relaxian hymns that resonated through the cosmos, and felt the strange, collective joy of a species united in thought. The Relaxians valued harmony and shared experience above all else, their lives intricately woven into a tapestry of unity. When Jason pulled his hand away, he staggered slightly, his mind racing to process what he had seen. Your culture, he said breathlessly, is extraordinary. The way you experience the world. It's so interconnected. And yours, the queen replied, is raw, unrefined, and yet compelling. There is a fire in humanity that burns brightly, even in the face of adversity. It is alluring. Jason stiffened at her choice of words but held her gaze. I believe our differences are what make this exchange valuable, Your Majesty. The queen's glow softened, almost tenderly. Indeed, Commander, I find myself drawn to the unpredictability of your kind. Perhaps there is much we can learn from one another. As the evening progressed, Jason couldn't help but notice the queen's intense focus on him. Her questions became more personal, probing not just into humanity but into Jason himself. For the first time, he began to wonder if this cultural exchange might have deeper implications than he'd initially realized. The Relaxian queen's sanctum pulsed with a hypnotic glow, the living walls rippling with every subtle shift in emotion. Jason Matthews sat on a curved, vine-like seat that adjusted itself to his form, his posture a careful blend of diplomatic composure and cautious curiosity. The queen's probing questions had shifted in tone, not hostile, but undeniably personal. Commander, the queen began, her harmonic voice resonating through the chamber. I sense a guardedness within you. Tell me, does your species not prize openness? Jason tilted his head slightly, choosing his words with care. Openness is valuable, Your Majesty, but so is discretion. Among humans, trust is often earned, not given freely. The queen's glow flickered, a sign Jason had come to interpret as amusement. A fascinating contrast. Among my people, trust is inherent, built into our very biology. We have no need for secrecy. Our thoughts flow freely into the collective consciousness. Jason nodded. That kind of transparency must make misunderstandings rare. Rare indeed, the queen replied. Her gaze lingered on him, and her tone grew contemplative. And yet, I find myself intrigued by your barriers. They give you a mystery, a depth that eludes us. Tell me, Commander, do you ever wish to be understood without words? Jason hesitated, the question catching him off guard. I suppose there are moments when words fall short. But for humans, the struggle to convey feelings is part of what makes them meaningful. The queen leaned forward slightly, her bioluminescent crown casting a soft glow over Jason. Perhaps that is why your kind is so compelling. You must strive for connection, rather than simply existing within it. There is a certain beauty in such effort. Jason felt a flicker of discomfort. Was this fascination purely academic? Or was there something more? The Queen's questions had taken on an oddly intimate quality, and the way her luminous form seemed to focus solely on him left little room for doubt. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "it's clear that our species have much to learn from each other. But I must admit, your curiosity about humanity feels personal." The Queen's glow intensified, and the chamber grew warmer, as if responding to her emotions. "Is that so surprising, Commander? You represent a species unlike any we have encountered. Your capacity for emotion, for passion, sets you apart. It is only natural that I would wish to understand you fully." Jason's diplomatic instincts kicked in, steering the conversation back to safer ground. "Understanding is the foundation of any strong alliance, Your Majesty. And alliances are built on mutual respect." The Queen tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Respect, yes. But alliances are also built on trust, are they not?" Jason's pulse quickened as she rose from her throne, her lithe form gliding closer. The chamber's walls shimmered with a cascade of colors, reflecting emotions Jason couldn't fully grasp. He stood instinctively, maintaining his composure as she stopped a mere step away. "Tell me, Commander," the Queen said softly, her voice now a gentle hum in his mind, "do you believe your species capable of forming such trust with mine? True trust, unburdened by the barriers you hold so tightly?" Jason held her gaze, the air between them charged with an energy he couldn't ignore. "I believe trust takes time, Your Majesty. But I also believe it's worth the effort." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of the chamber's organic systems. Then, the Queen's glow softened, and she stepped back, her posture relaxing. "You are wise, Commander," she said, her voice returning to its melodic cadence. "Perhaps I was too hasty in my approach. Your kind's ways are unfamiliar to us, and I see now that trust must be cultivated, not demanded." Jason nodded, relieved that the intensity of the moment had passed. "Understanding each other's differences is the first step, Your Majesty. I'm confident we can find common ground." The Queen inclined her head. "Your confidence is reassuring. And yet, I cannot deny that your species' individuality fascinates me. You are so disconnected, yet you burn with such intensity. I find myself drawn to this paradox." Jason smiled faintly, sensing that her curiosity, while genuine, was also veiled in deeper layers he couldn't yet decipher. "Humanity thrives on paradox, Your Majesty. It's part of what makes us who we are." The Queen's gaze lingered on him for a moment longer before she turned away, her glow dimming slightly. "Perhaps that is why I find your kind so captivating. Your flaws are not weaknesses but sources of strength." Before Jason could respond, a soft chime echoed through the chamber, signaling the arrival of a Relaxian attendant. The gelatinous being bowed deeply before addressing the Queen telepathically. "Forgive the interruption, Your Majesty, but the Council awaits your presence." The Queen nodded, her attention returning to Jason. "Duty calls, Commander. But I hope this exchange has brought us closer to the understanding we both seek." "It has, Your Majesty," Jason replied with a respectful bow. "I look forward to continuing this dialogue." As the Queen departed with her attendant, Jason exhaled deeply, the tension in his chest finally easing. The Queen's curiosity had been intense, almost disarming, but it was clear that her interest in humanity, and in him, was more than academic. Stepping back into the transport that would take him to his quarters, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far more complex. The Queen's words echoed in his mind, her fascination with humanity resonating in ways he wasn't entirely prepared to face. Jason's mind raced as he stepped off the transport and into the quiet corridors of his quarters. The Queen's words lingered, her intense curiosity about humanity, and him, gnawing at the edges of his composure. He had faced countless diplomatic challenges before, but this was different. Her interest wasn't just in humanity's potential as an ally. Felt personal. He sat heavily on the living chair in his room, which adjusted to his form with a faint hum. The alien fabrications of the Relaxians were almost too accommodating, as if they sought to erase all discomfort. Jason found himself longing for the rigidity of Earth's steel and glass. Before he could settle his thoughts, the holographic assistant shimmered to life again. The metallic figure's tone was as neutral as ever, but its words carried weight. "Commander Matthews, Her Majesty requests your presence in the Verdant Sanctum. The Queen has deemed this an event of significant cultural importance." Jason frowned, his unease growing. Another private meeting? And this time it was an event. He stood, straightened his uniform, and took a steadying breath. "Inform her I'll attend." The Verdant Sanctum was unlike the chamber Jason had visited earlier. It was alive in every sense of the word. Massive, bioluminescent trees stretched to the vaulted ceiling, their leaves glowing softly in shades of green, blue, and gold. Vines slithered gently along the floor, weaving intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with light. The air was thick with a sweet, floral scent that seemed almost intoxicating. At the center of it all stood the Queen. Her crown of bioluminescence glowed brighter here, the natural surroundings amplifying her regal presence. She wasn't alone this time. A small gathering of Relaxian figures, each distinct in shape and form, stood in a loose semicircle around her. Their glowing bodies shimmered with the vibrant hues of curiosity and excitement. As Jason approached, the Queen's gaze locked onto him, and the other Relaxians turned their attention his way. He felt the weight of their collective focus, a silent, telepathic hum that pressed against his mind without invading it. "Commander Matthews," the Queen said, her voice resonating through the chamber. "You honor us with your presence." Jason inclined his head respectfully. "The honor is mine, Your Majesty. May I ask the purpose of this gathering?" The Queen gestured to the space around them, her glow softening. "This is a moment of shared exploration. My advisors and I wish to deepen our understanding of your kind, and we believe a direct exchange is the most effective way." Jason's brow furrowed. "Exchange?" One of the advisors stepped forward, their form crystalline and angular, with a voice like chimes in the wind. "Humanity's essence is rooted in emotion, individuality, and connection. We wish to experience this through you, Commander. It is a rare opportunity." Jason stiffened, suddenly wary. "Experience? How?" The Queen raised a hand, her voice soothing. "Do not be alarmed, Commander. It is a simple process. Our telepathic abilities allow us to share sensations and memories without harm. We only wish to glimpse your perspective, to understand the depth of human emotion." Jason hesitated, his instincts screaming caution. The Relaxians' telepathic capabilities were far beyond anything humanity could defend against. Sharing even a fraction of his thoughts felt like exposing his very soul. "I'm not sure I fully understand the implications," he said carefully. "What exactly are you asking of me?" The Queen stepped closer, her glow intensifying as she spoke. "We ask only for what you are willing to share. A moment, a memory, or an emotion that defines humanity in your eyes. In return, we will share the essence of Relaxian existence with you." A true exchange. Jason's pulse quickened. He could feel the weight of the moment, the gathered Relaxians' collective curiosity pressing against him. He had come here to forge an alliance, to build bridges between two vastly different civilizations. This was an opportunity to do just that, but it required a level of vulnerability he wasn't sure he could afford. "I'll agree," he said finally, his voice steady, "on one condition. You share first." The Queen's glow brightened, a ripple of amusement running through the gathered Relaxians. "A reasonable request, Commander. Step forward, and I shall show you what it means to be Relaxian." Jason hesitated for only a moment before stepping onto the platform at the center of the sanctum. The Queen extended her hand, her translucent fingers glowing softly as they hovered near his temple. He felt a faint warmth as her voice entered his mind, not as words but as pure sensation. In an instant, Jason was overwhelmed. He felt the unity of the Relaxians, a seamless connection to every mind around him. Their emotions flowed like rivers, merging into a collective ocean of thought. There was no loneliness, no barriers, only the comforting embrace of endless understanding. He saw their history, their triumphs, and their losses, all shared without hesitation or fear. When the sensation faded, Jason staggered back, his mind reeling. "It's overwhelming," he said, his voice hoarse. "Beautiful but overwhelming." The Queen inclined her head. "And now, Commander, we humbly request to feel what it means to be human." Jason swallowed hard, his heart pounding. What could he share that would convey the essence of humanity? After a long moment, he closed his eyes and focused on a single memory. His mother's laughter as she tucked him in as a child, the warmth of her hug, and the unspoken love that had carried him through even the darkest times. The Queen's hand touched his temple, and Jason felt the memory flow outward, carried into the collective consciousness of the Relaxians. When he opened his eyes, the room was silent, the gathered aliens glowing with hues he couldn't identify. The Queen's voice was soft, almost reverent. "Such love, such vulnerability. It is extraordinary." Jason exhaled, his tension finally easing. For the first time, he felt that he had truly bridged the gap between their worlds. But as the Queen's gaze lingered on him, glowing with an intensity he couldn't ignore, he realized their connection was far from complete, and far more personal than he had ever expected. Jason returned to his quarters, the events of the verdant sanctum replaying in his mind like a vivid dream. The overwhelming sensation of the Relaxian collective consciousness and the profound emotional exchange had left him shaken. For the first time since arriving on Relaxia, he felt exposed in a way no training or diplomatic protocol could prepare him for. The Queen's lingering gaze as the exchange concluded haunted him. Her fascination with humanity seemed to extend beyond mere curiosity. It felt personal. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this cultural exchange was steering towards something far deeper than either of them had anticipated. As he sank into the organic chair that adapted seamlessly to his form, a soft chime echoed through the room. The holographic assistant appeared once more, its liquid metallic form flickering with light. "Commander Matthews," it intoned, "Her Majesty has requested a private audience. A transport awaits to escort you to her personal chambers." Jason's brows furrowed. Another private meeting? This was unusual, even by the Queen's enigmatic standards. Still, refusal wasn't an option. Taking a steadying breath, he rose and adjusted his uniform. "Inform her I'm on my way." The transport ride was silent. The crystalline city below bathed in the cool light of the twin moons. Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as the vehicle climbed higher, finally docking at a spire that seemed isolated even by Relaxian architectural standards. The Queen's personal chambers were a stark contrast to the grand sanctums and ceremonial halls he had seen before. The space was intimate, almost minimalist, with walls that pulsed with a steady, calming rhythm. A single bioluminescent tree grew at the center, its branches stretching toward the ceiling in a graceful arc. The Queen stood beneath its glow, her translucent form shimmering with a soft light. She turned as he entered, her expression unreadable but her presence undeniably commanding. "Commander Matthews," she greeted, her voice softer than usual, the harmonic undertones almost melodic. "Thank you for coming." Jason inclined his head. "You requested an audience, Your Majesty. I'm here to serve the interests of our alliance." The Queen approached, her movements fluid, almost hypnotic. "An alliance is built on more than mere political agreements, Commander. It requires understanding, true understanding." Jason's jaw tightened. "I thought our exchange in the sanctum was a significant step toward that understanding." "It was," the Queen agreed, her glow intensifying. "But it left me with questions. Your memory, the one you shared, was beautiful and deeply personal. It revealed not just the strength of your species, but the depth of your character. It is you, Jason, who fascinates me most." The use of his first name sent a jolt through him. For all their prior interactions, the Queen had always addressed him formally. This shift in tone felt intentional, deliberate. "Your Majesty," Jason began cautiously, "I'm honored by your interest, But I must remind you that I am here as a representative of humanity, not as an individual. The queen's glow dimmed slightly, her expression contemplative. And yet, it is your individuality that sets you apart. Humanity's strength lies in its contradictions, its ability to feel so deeply, to persevere despite vulnerability. You embody these traits in ways I find compelling. Jason took a step back, his mind racing. Compelling in what sense? The queen moved closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You have shown me something my people have never truly understood, the power of connection born not from unity, but from struggle, from the chaos of individuality. It is intoxicating. Jason's pulse quickened, his diplomatic instincts clashing with the growing tension in the room. Your Majesty, he said firmly, I believe our differences are what make this exchange valuable. But I also believe boundaries are necessary for mutual respect. The queen paused, her glow fluctuating as if she were weighing his words. Finally, she inclined her head. You are right, of course. Forgive me if I have overstepped. Your presence here has opened my mind to possibilities I had not considered. Jason exhaled, the tension in his chest easing slightly. Understanding one another takes time, Your Majesty. I'm committed to that process, but it must be approached with care. The queen nodded, her glow softening. Perhaps I have been too eager. Your perspective is invaluable, Jason, and I respect the boundaries you have set. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the faint hum of the room's organic systems. Then the queen spoke again, her tone more formal. You have my gratitude for your patience and your insights. I shall reflect on what we have shared tonight. Jason inclined his head, sensing the audience was nearing its end. Thank you, Your Majesty. I hope this dialogue continues to strengthen our understanding and our alliance. As he turned to leave, the queen's voice stopped him. Jason, he glanced back, her luminous form bathed in the tree's glow. Do not fear what you cannot yet understand, she said softly. Sometimes, it is in the unknown that we find our greatest truths. Jason left the chamber with those words echoing in his mind. The queen's intentions were growing increasingly difficult to decipher, but one thing was clear. Their interactions were no longer confined to diplomacy. A deeper connection was forming, one that could either solidify their alliance or unravel everything. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings, diplomatic discussions, and strategic planning. Yet, despite the ever-present hum of negotiations, Jason couldn't shake the unsettling thoughts that had taken root after his meeting with the queen. The intimacy of their exchange, her fascination with his individuality, the subtle tension that pulsed between them, kept him on edge. It was clear now, the queen wasn't simply interested in humanity for political gain. There was something deeper, something more personal at play. Though he kept his focus on his duties, part of him couldn't help but wonder. Was this all part of a carefully orchestrated diplomatic maneuver? Or had he become something more in her eyes? The question gnawed at him during every brief respite, every moment of solitude in his quarters. His usual methods of compartmentalizing his thoughts were failing him. The queen had crossed a line, perhaps unwittingly, and now he was unsure how to proceed. It was late in the evening, just after the twin moons had risen and the city outside his window glittered with a surreal, iridescent glow, that the chime came again. Commander Matthews, the holographic assistant, intoned, its tone as neutral as always. Her Majesty requests your presence in the chrysalis chamber. It is an urgent matter. Jason's pulse quickened, the familiar tightness in his chest returning. Understood, he replied, standing up from his chair. His instincts told him this would be different from their previous encounters. The queen's interest had been growing, and he was beginning to feel like the centerpiece of an unspoken game. The chrysalis chamber was a space unlike any Jason had yet seen on Relaxia. It was vast and circular, its walls lined with translucent crystals that pulsed with a soft, inner light. At the center stood the queen, her silhouette framed by the shimmering stones. She appeared deep in thought, her body radiating a calm that seemed at odds with the intensity he felt. As he approached, she turned, her gaze locking onto his with that same unsettling focus that had both mesmerized and disturbed him. "Commander," she said, her voice carrying a weight that made the air around them seem heavier. "You are aware that our alliance is delicate. There are forces within both our governments who doubt its potential. We must act swiftly and decisively to ensure that it succeeds." Jason nodded. "I've heard the murmurs of dissent. But we both know that the most effective alliances are based on more than mere pragmatism. They require mutual understanding, trust." The Queen's expression shifted, her glow dimming slightly. "Trust, yes. But trust alone will not secure our future. It is your species' unpredictability that makes me wonder if such an alliance is truly possible. Can humanity commit to unity when you are defined by division?" Jason frowned, his frustration rising. "You've seen what we're capable of. The diversity within humanity is a strength, not a weakness. We adapt, we overcome because we're different from one another. It's what allows us to think outside the box, to find solutions no one else could see." The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "And yet, it is precisely that chaos that makes it so difficult for your species to function as one. Your instincts are driven by individual needs, by self-preservation." Jason shook his head. "You think we're divided because we value individuality. You don't understand that it's because we choose to be individuals, to embrace our differences. There is no greater bond than choosing to stand together despite those differences." The Queen's tone softened, almost wistful. "Perhaps that is something I will never fully comprehend." Jason stood his ground. "Perhaps. But you're learning, and that's what matters." For a moment, the Queen remained silent, her glowing form casting soft shadows across the chamber. It was as though she were contemplating his words, wrestling with an understanding that still eluded her. Finally, she spoke again, her voice now tinged with something that might have been regret. "Commander, I do not ask you to change, nor do I wish to impose my beliefs upon you. But there are forces within my own people who do not share my fascination with humanity." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What forces?" The Queen sighed, her bioluminescent crown flickering faintly. "There are those who see our alliance as a vulnerability. They fear that your species, with all its unpredictable elements, could destabilize Relaxian society. They see your strength, yes, but they also see the potential for disaster." Jason felt the weight of her words, the implications settling like a heavy cloud. "So there are factions within your government that oppose the alliance? That's unexpected." The Queen's gaze turned hard. "It is not only within my government. There are those among the Relaxian military who believe humanity's presence here is a threat. Some see your emotional complexity as a weakness that could undermine us." Jason's mind raced. This was more than just a diplomatic challenge. It was a political minefield. If the alliance fell apart now, it could lead to disaster, not just for him but for Earth as well. The Queen took a step closer, her tone shifting to something more urgent. "I've worked to protect our alliance, but my position is fragile. I need your help, Commander. There are those who would seek to undermine us before the alliance can truly form. You must stand by me, not just as a diplomat, but as a symbol." Jason's pulse quickened. "A symbol?" "Yes," she said softly, her voice lowering to a near whisper. "A symbol of trust, of unity. Humanity's strength, your individual power, is what can solidify this alliance. You represent something they cannot control or predict, and that is precisely why you are invaluable to me." Jason's stomach twisted at her words. The weight of the moment bore down on him. The Queen's fascination with him, with humanity, had become something far more complex, something tangled in the threads of politics, power, and personal desire. "I'll stand with you, Your Majesty," Jason said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling within him. "But I need to know, are you asking me to choose between my duty to Earth and whatever this is between us?" The Queen's eyes softened, and for the briefest moment, her glow seemed to flicker with something like vulnerability. "I do not ask you to choose. I only ask that you remain by my side, for the good of both our people." Jason stared into her eyes, the silence between them thick with unspoken words. He had no clear answers, no easy way forward, but one thing was undeniable. Their fates were now intertwined in ways he couldn't have predicted. The real question, he realized, was not whether he could trust the Queen, but whether he could trust himself. Jason sat alone in his quarters, staring out the large window at the sprawling city below. The Relaxian skyline glittered in the light of the twin moons, a majestic and serene vision. Yet, all Jason could focus on was the storm raging inside him. The weight of the Queen's words still lingered in his mind, pushing and pulling him in directions he couldn't fully comprehend. The events of the past few days had shifted everything. What had begun as a mission to strengthen ties between Earth and Relaxia had become something much more personal, much more dangerous. The Queen, with her mysterious allure, had begun to draw him in, not just as a diplomat, but as something more. She wanted him as a symbol, a living testament to the power of the Alliance. But at what cost? Jason's thoughts were interrupted by the familiar chime of the holographic assistant. He knew what it meant before the figure materialized in front of him. "Commander Matthews," the assistant said, its tone neutral. "Her Majesty has requested your presence in the verdant sanctum." "It is urgent." Jason swallowed, his throat dry. He had been expecting this, another meeting, another conversation that would test the boundaries between them. But this time he wasn't sure if he could keep his composure. His relationship with the Queen had moved into dangerous territory, and he felt as though he were standing on the precipice of something far greater than he had ever intended. Without responding, he stood and left the room. The transport ride felt longer than usual, the silence oppressive. When he arrived at the sanctum, the air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, and the bioluminescent trees seemed to shimmer more brightly than ever. The Queen stood at the center of the room, her posture regal, but her expression soft and uncertain. Her eyes flickered with an emotion Jason couldn't place. Vulnerability, perhaps, or something deeper. "Commander," she said, her voice low and almost hesitant. "I am glad you came." Jason nodded, trying to steady his own racing heart. "You requested an urgent meeting, Your Majesty." "What is it?" The Queen took a step closer, her gaze never leaving his. "I fear the path we are on is leading to dangerous consequences. Our enemies, both within Relaxia and beyond, are growing bolder. I can no longer protect you, or this alliance, without risking everything." Jason felt a chill settle in his chest. "What are you saying?" She hesitated for a moment, then spoke with a quiet intensity. "I've made enemies, Commander. There are factions within my own people who will stop at nothing to see our alliance fall apart. And now they are turning their attention toward you. If they believe you are a threat to Relaxia's stability, if they believe you are the key to our unity, they will come for you. They will stop at nothing to tear you apart. And in doing so, they will tear this alliance apart with you." Jason's heart raced. He had always known that diplomacy was a dangerous game, but this felt like something entirely different. The stakes had shifted from politics to personal survival. "You're telling me that I'm in danger?" he asked, his voice tight. The Queen nodded, her face pale. "Yes, and it is because of the bond that has formed between us, because of what you represent to Relaxia, that you are now a target. I will protect you as best as I can, but I cannot guarantee your safety." "Not anymore." Jason clenched his fists, his mind racing. This was no longer about a diplomatic mission. It was no longer about Earth or Relaxia. This was about his life, and he was caught in the middle of something far greater than he had ever expected. The Queen stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to put you in this position. I never wanted our connection to go this far. But now that it has, I fear what it will mean for both our worlds. There is a choice you must make, Jason." Jason looked at her, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and anger. "What choice?" "You must decide whether you will stay by my side and continue to represent humanity in this fragile alliance, or whether you will leave Relaxia, cut ties with me, and return to Earth, where you will be safe." The words hit him like a physical blow. He had always known that his mission was dangerous, but he hadn't fully understood the magnitude of it until now. The Queen was offering him a way out, a chance to escape before everything fell apart. But the cost of leaving was high. Jason took a step back, his thoughts racing. On one hand, he could return to Earth, safe, secure, and protected from whatever dangers Relaxia held. His mission would be considered a failure, but at least he would live to see another day. On the other hand, if he chose to stand with the Queen, he would be putting his life and possibly the future of humanity at risk. He looked at the Queen, who was waiting for his response with an almost pained expression. Her bioluminescent crown flickered faintly, as if mirroring the uncertainty that clouded her mind. Jason knew that he had spent years training to make decisions under pressure. He had faced countless life-or-death situations in his career, but none had ever felt so personal, so tangled in emotions and allegiances. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked softly, his voice hoarse. The Queen's gaze softened, a flicker of something close to longing passing through her eyes. "I want what is best for both our peoples, Jason. But I also know that you are not just a symbol. You are a person, and your life matters to me. I cannot ask you to make this sacrifice unless it is what you truly want." Jason swallowed hard. The weight of her words settled on him like an anchor, pulling him down into the depths of the decision he had to make. The future of humanity, the future of Relaxia, the future of his own heart. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he made a choice. "I will stay," he said, his voice steady, though his insides were still in turmoil. "I will stand by your side, Your Majesty, for the good of both our worlds." The Queen's expression softened, her glow brightening with a mixture of relief and something more, a tenderness that Jason hadn't expected. "Thank you," she whispered, taking a step closer. "Together, we will face whatever comes next." As Jason stood there, the weight of his decision pressing down on him, he realized that he had crossed a line. There was no turning back now. His life, his mission, and his future were bound to Relaxia and to the enigmatic Queen who had captured his heart and mind. The choice had been made, and now they would face the consequences together. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stellar HFY content. Ring that bell to stay updated, and we'll see you next time.